This is how I win.
This is no democracy. It is a dictatorship.
Hate. Double hate.
Loathe entirely.
You're out of order! You're out of order!
Everything that guy just says is bullshit. Thank you.
Life is cruel.
I don't give a what the deal was. The deal is now changed. Either you stay or you go. It's up to you. End of discussion.
Good morning, sunshines. I guess I still have I welcome my classroom, so when I'm performing, all I can say is good morning, sunshine. Welcome. Hi, I'm Cody Newberry, and I am tonight hosting Wild S's Your List Sucks best classic actors represented by one movie. And as the new Cody Newberry, I am making an unofficial rule that instead of Your List Sucks, we need more positivity in this world. So for tonight's, it's the name is Your List is Fine, and we'll work together to make it better collaboratively. So
we did this bit last week. They literally did this last week.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't pay the fuck attention. I don't know what's happening. I'm feeling really bad that my bits are taken by someone else. Okay. I compare bits. Let me know who did it better. Probably not me. Let's introduce our guests. First tonight, I got very excited about the word first. First tonight is Andrew Barr. He has 8 R's in his name. Barr. How you feeling? Are you worried about having me on a panel because this will inevitably go off the rails?
You have me on here, so it's gonna go off the rails as well. This is what the show is built for, though. So I'm excited.
Okay, and our next guest, Kaleb Boatman. If you had to be one classic actor, who describes your personality to the best?
Oh, that's John Fiedler. John Fiedler.
Okay. And Paul Yama, I have no questions because I ran out of bits. So say something to spill up time.
Listen, if we're never on the rails, we cannot go off the rails. That's all I have to say.
That's fair.
Wonderful. I was hoping that this would take up at least an hour of time and intros, and now my plan is ruined. So we're going to start off with, if I remember how the shows goes, I'm going to be very impressed. We're going to start off with 10 through 8.
Yes.
Hey.
Okay. We're good.
And we're yikesing if it is the same actor, even if it's not the same movie. Right?
Yes, and you will yikes it if it is the same actor. And we're doing best actor represented by one movie, so we're going to talk largely about the actors, but of course have a little bit of commentary about the movie and that role itself. But we can talk about them broader as an actor at the time as well. So Bar, hit me with your number 10.
My number 10 is Natalie Wood for Love with the Proper Stranger. I don't like the way Boatman reacted already. My number 9 is Spencer Tracy for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And my number 8 is Katherine Hepburn for Bringing Up Baby.
Yikes.
Figured. So number 10, Natalie Wood. I really like Natalie Wood. And it wasn't really until this particular movie that I fell in love with her as an actress. I think that she just really carries the drama of the situation at hand really well in this. And I think it kind of made me go back to kind of like view her in a different light as an actress. My number 9 being Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy just has this presence that he carries with him, but he's really good at being able to do both dramatic work and comedic work. This one probably being the one that has stuck with me the most, because there's just an honesty and an earnestness to him as he's just trying to figure out the situation at hand. I think that Spencer Tracy's just really great.
Yeah, no, number 8. Okay, number 10. So Natalie Wood. So here's the thing. I watched most of the movies for this show. I like Paul the best, so I actually made sure I watched all his movies before I got to yours.
At least he's honest.
And Boat gave me his list like last night, so it was a little more difficult.
I thought this show wasn't filming till the 8th.
I actually had this movie through we'll call it alternative means. I was on an airplane and I started it and there was no sound. So because of that, this movie is cursed and your pick is cursed, so it's a bad pick because the sound didn't work. I've seen Natalie Wood in West Side Story. She's like fine. She's in Rebel Without Cause too, right? I didn't make this up. Yeah, I remember her being pretty good, but that's is James Dean's go-to movie. So I need more experience with her as like a leading person other than playing Maria to have a true opinion. Other than you picked a non-existent movie, so that hurts you. Never heard this in my life. Okay, Spencer, you've heard it. Have you seen it? All right. Yeah. Spencer Tracy for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Good actor pick. And I would say I feel like I have biases against this movie because the community is obsessed with it, because there's a certain idea of this like kind of political ideals of the 60s that people still like admire, that we will like these movies without kind of holding it not accountable, but in comparison to modern movies handling the same subjects with maybe a little more depth and a little more nuance than this movie hit. So I have biases against that, but I will say the performance is really good. I think it's Sidney Poitier is think the best performance in the movie for a variety of reasons. But I have a love of, I think I watched all but one of Spencer Tracy and Kat Hep's movies, so I have an appreciation of that dynamic that I think definitely comes off to play here, and it's really a showcase for him in a lot of ways. He gets the most speechifying, so a solid pick. I just have some problems with the movie. Okay, we will move on to Boat for your 10 through 8.
My 10 is Joanne Woodward for The Three Faces of Eve. Ooh. Shut up. My 9 is Burt Lancaster, represented by Sweet Smell of Success.
Yikes.
And my 8 is Karl Malden, represented by On the Waterfront.
We're going to get a lot of details on how much I researched and put effort into this. I actually put a lot of effort, so I shouldn't have myself. But okay, Joanne Woodward is one I didn't get to for Three Faces.
Doesn't Bo get to talk?
Yeah. Oh shit! I forgot you talked. You said the name movies.
Oh my god! We let you host the show once.
Okay. I said immediately, like, what a mistake they're making.
So, Joanne Woodward. You may know her as like the actual real life wife of Paul Newman. She did a lot of movies with Paul Newman. Paul Newman's not in this one. In Three Faces of Eve, she plays a woman with 3 different personalities, but she's like great in a lot of things. She's really great in Paris Blues. She's great in A New Kind of Love. I think she's really just one of the most underrated like classic actresses. I think she's just really fantastic. She can play like so many different roles, and Three Faces of Eve is like easily her best performance. Karl Malden, I think, is just like one of those actors that just improves every movie he's in. I just love him in everything, like from A Streetcar Named Desire or Birdman of Alcatraz. But to me, like On the Waterfront is like easily his best performance, and he should have won the Oscar. Him as the priest is just incredible. The monologue, "This is my church," is just one of my favorite scenes in a movie. Karl Malden kills it.
So for Joanne Woodward, I didn't make it this movie. I would have loved to. It was one that just I already kind of had a plan at that point, and number 10s were not going to come up to my priority. And Joanne Woodward, you say, is kind of a forgotten classic actress at the time, probably needs more attention. Unfairly, maybe Paul Newman, took some of the shine from their marriage that she kind of got ignored. When I have seen her in, I saw Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. It's one of their like old people movies as a couple, and pretty lovely performance that she gives. It's kind of an old lady performance, but it's really solid and still sweet and thoughtful. And that's really when she gets to kind of shine over Paul Newman. It's a really good vehicle for her as well. And she's in Philadelphia, but like that's a small role. interesting pick. I'm like that you're taking chances number 10 and shining light on someone new. Here, Karl Malden. This is we're gonna have a conversation. I meant to look this up. I love On the Waterfront the last 5 years. Who is he in this movie? Is he the brother?
No, he's the priest.
He's the priest. Tiger. Got it. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's been like 7 years. Okay. Can you name me 3 other movies that Karl Malden was in?
Birdman of Alcatraz, A Streetcar Named Desire, Patton.
Okay, yeah. Okay, great. So, good job. Dig into the supporting actors. I talked to people before about getting some of the leads. For some reason, whatever, and On the Waterfront. Now you say priest, I understand the role, and it's a solid performance. But for some reason, it doesn't stick out in my mind. Have no memory of him in Streetcar Named Desire. It's been a long time. So interesting pick. I wish I had more, memory of who this guy is. We'll look at Google images. We'll share that with everybody. I'm checking now. But moving on. The show's going to get better from here. 10 through 8. We're going to call this a flop. Go, Paul.
My number 10 is Katherine Denwev for The Umbrella Cherbourg. My number 9 is Montgomery Clift for A Place in the Sun. And my number 8 is Setsuko Hara for Tokyo Story. So Katherine Denwev, honestly, my favorite performance by her is not this movie, but it's the director I didn't want to put on the show. So I made a choice there. But I think she's a great person who's really good at emoting, I think, without talking. And I think she's really expressive with her face in a way that I think a lot of actors are not. I haven't seen Belle de Jour, but that's one I really want to see bad because I think that's a different kind of angle for her to play. But I think I love all her Jacques Demy collaborations. And this is probably my favorite, certainly movie, but I think also performance, just because I think she really plays to the kind of melodrama of this kind of movie. And I just think she's an incredible actress that I think does like stuff like fantasy and romance and all drama and different kinds of genres really well. And I think she's super. I mean, she's kind of underrated. I mean, I think people kind of like her, but not as much as maybe they should. My number 9, Montgomery Clift. He's one of the most handsome actors of the classic era, and I think he uses that to his advantage. He's kind of like Brad Pitt, I think, in that sense. Like, he uses this veneer of his good looks, but then he burrows into this kind of darkness sometimes that can underlie that. Especially in A Place in the Sun, you see this relationship where he kind of comes in bright-eyed and he doesn't really know this corporate world he's entering. And then he is so sort of caught allure by the pull-in of this woman played by Elizabeth Taylor. And you see the kind of pull between her and Shelley Winters' character. And I just think he's such an incredibly gifted actor, again, that having an underlying darkness kind of within this like sort of handsome and up-to-do veneer that I think like you would normally get. Seeing him, he's great in stuff like From Here to Eternity. I think he's amazing in I Confess, which is a really underrated Hitchcock movie, I think, that Karl Malden, I think, is actually also in. But yeah, I think Montgomery Clift is just an awesome actor that like really, again, like he would be like in this era, he would be like super kind of talked about me because of against his good looks. Number 8, Setsuko Hara. Probably most well known for her collaborations with Ozu. He's kind of her great muse. But specifically, it's something like Tokyo Story. I think she's so good at injecting this kind of like positive kind of effervescence into a family that otherwise is kind of dour and a little serious. But I just think like she's so bright and full of life in a way that I think is hard to nail. And then there's a scene near the end of this movie where she's talking about how she's selfish, and she's talking to her father-in-law in this movie. And I just think like that the level she plays there. And certainly there are points where she gets really emotional, but before that, when she's kind of on the verge of that, she really, I think, communicates the kind of pathos of the movie in such a like wonderful manner. She's great in the Kurosawa movie she's in too, stuff like The Idiot and No Regrets for Our Youth. I think she's just an incredible actress that I just think is kind of forgotten to time. If anyone's seen or heard of the movie Millennium Actress, it's much like it's kind of a love letter to her life and career. And the story of her arc of her career. But I think she's an amazing actress that, I think American audiences should expose themselves to, because she's, I think, one of the great actresses of the classic era, and just like really like super memorable, and is always the standout performance in any movie she's in, I think.
Okay. Here we go. Here's some A+ hosting going on because I've seen all these movies. Let's say B+. I got to have fair expectations. Katherine Denuze, great pick. Probably would have been on my list. And you talked about her being underrated. I think I don't want to like place like hypothesis or assumptions on where someone's career went, but I feel like she's someone that should have had this like great elderly career, maybe like a Judi Dench or someone, especially Fitzroy. She's appears.
She's got time. She's in the Core-Ada movie, yeah.
Yeah, she was in The Truth, and that was really great in that. And she will appear in some like random French movies every now and then. But I feel like she should be like real royalty at this point that it's like a deal when she's on, because if you look at her classic film, not just Jacques Demy, but broader French cinema, you brought up Belle de Jour, which is a movie I adore, and a really interesting performance by her, especially to like contrast some of the innocence that she kind of has in the Demy movies, and toy with that a little bit in an interesting way. But yeah, in the Demy movies, this and Young Girls of Roquefort, I can't pronounce the French words as great as you did, like Denwev.
I think it's Rochefort, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, let's go with it. That there's this kind of, she has the real like French romanticism to her. I feel like she's the epitome of that kind of 60s French kind of go-go romanticism that is charming and lovely to watch, and she can also handle the heartbreak that Bella Cherbourg is so famous for. And her voice isn't spectacular for this essentially being a fully sung movie, but it doesn't need to be, because it just adds to the like whimsy and lyricalism. It's not trying to be these like show busting songs. It's a great pick. Okay. Number 9 was Montgomery Clift. I just watched this last night. This movie is kind of a banger. I lose it a little bit in the end as it becomes more of a court case. It becomes a little preachy at times, which is a part of like classic movies, I think, a little bit. But I still think his performance works in step with the movie and in creating this kind of moral ambiguity of can you place judgment on this character and his kind of sins throughout the movie based on his like real torture soul and his real feelings. So someone's like intentions and ideas counteract the actual act they encountered, and I think he has that very soulful, torn up look to his face that counteracts his, beauty. You said like Brad Pitt. He looks like someone who's been a hard time. He looks like the kid that grew up, in the coal field that just happens to be way too beautiful for his town. There's just a little bit of destroyed. So great pick. And 8, Satsuko Hara. This was really interesting because like the first hour or so of the movie, she's a smaller role in this in Tokyo Story. But I was like, this is like she's kind of like sitting there listening, responding kindly, and that's kind of her role. And there's not much for her to do. But as the movie goes on, especially gets to the ending, you realize all the nuance she's been playing the whole time. And if you really, and Ozu is really good at making it like a portraiture, like so framing the actors center in the screen that you're really paying all attention to their body movements and her face. And her face is doing so much work, the subtlety of how her eyes are staring, or her mouth will slightly like go down, that she's like up front having trying to be polite and kind and not show her pain, but you can see in her mind how she's reacting to things, and it's very it honestly becomes a remarkable performance once you realize that it's something you should be paying attention to, which she kind of sneakily slides into it. So I was really impressed. So Jerry's side, don't spoil number 1. Just chill the fuck out, Alan.
Yeah, fuck.
Yeah, Adelaide.
Okay. All right, I guess we're on to bar 7.
What's the slander for Denuve? Who slandered?
She has a great voice. Check yourself.
Okay.
Adelaide, you're not on this show.
Shut up, Peter
Right.
Gallery.
Let's not turn the show into that. Let's please not turn the show.
Bar number 7 through 4. 7 through 4.
All right, so my number 7 is Walter Matthau, and I picked the movie Lonely Are the Brave. So I think a lot of people know Walter Matthau more as kind of like just a comedic actor, but he's really good at like doing a lot of different kind of performances. And Lonely Are the Brave is a movie where he plays a sheriff that is chasing Kirk Douglas's escaped convict character. And there is such a simplicity, but just a pleasure in the simplicity that he has in this movie. And the ending of this film is just kind of heartbreaking, especially when you just look at Walter Matthau's face and you just see like it didn't really have to come to this kind of disappointment in his eyes. I think he's as incredible as Kirk Douglas is in this movie. I think he's doing a little bit of a better job. And just come on, when you think of great comedy duos, you think of Lemmon and Matthau. So he's one of those people that just whenever he's on screen, he's fantastic. And I think that he's one of those actors that really kind of, sets a bar for a lot of other character actors.
Can't even get his name spelled right on the show.
Oh, is it 2 T's? Come
Yeah.
on, you're fired. I'm taking over.
You want to make some graphics in 5 hours before you make
You want to make graphics?
I barely know whose turn it is or when. I don't know how to work the graphics, but let's go. Walter Matthau. This is an interesting pick because I'm like, yeah, he's like had a great career. He's really, I think dynamic actor. You said more versatile than I think people give him credit, but like all the movies that come to my mind first are the 70s, which I'm not going to hold. I'm not holding semantics against it, but I am trying to judge specifically on the careers, before the 70s. And this movie, I watched it for 10 minutes, and I just because of other things, he did not even show up. I had a crazy ass experience with those first 10 minutes. It was like a real The Village kind of a thing to me because I read the plot summary, I watched, saw the intro, and where like once you see what world he's living in, I was caught completely off guard, and we could talk about that off screen. But I don't want to like spoil because I want other people to have this crazy experience, but I think I'm just dumb. But so I'm going to talk more about Walter Matthau and other movies, and especially 60s, 50s. He was like or 60s. He's primarily known for his collaborations with Jack Lemmon, and I think that dynamic was so important to his career and who he was, and maybe that's what kind of created the cliche of what his performances kind of are, is that like grumpy counteraction to his Jack Lemmon's nervousness, but he does that so well. For someone who is not on the show, but it's supposed to be, I watched The Odd Couple also, and him just playing, the loaf, I think he does it in a way that's not over the top and exaggerated like it, was an Odd Couple TV show, that I think he has the right level of touch to make these kind of characters human and real. I'm really interested. I'm going to finish All the Other Brave. I have full plans to do so because I was really into it. And I got just another one I haven't heard of before. So I'm into it. It's a solid pick, but once again, I feel like he just had more to blossom, as his career went on past the 60s. Everybody else with Walter Matthau?
Yeah, I think that I kind of have that. I love Walter Matthau, but I do kind of have that. Oh yeah, he almost always, from what I've seen, almost always plays Walter Matthau. Like, he's really good at playing Walter Matthau, and I love seeing him play Walter Matthau. I just don't think I've ever really seen a movie where he hasn't played just the Walter Matthau type. He's great, but that's why he didn't really make my list.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's kind of similar to Zach. My favorite Walter Matthau's are basically all the 70s stuff, like A New Leaf and Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3. The one thing I do really love him in the classic era is Failsafe. I don't know if you guys have seen Sidney Lumet's Failsafe, but he's really terrific in that as this professor character. But that's really one of the only classic era movies that I really love him in. I think he kind of grew into a much more mature actor as he aged. And like, I haven't seen this movie, so like maybe this is different. But a lot of the other movies, like I'm not super into like it's not that it's bad. It's just the comedic stuff is not like, it doesn't totally appeal to me in a way that I'm like, this is one of the all-time great classic actors. But he's a great actor, so can't really not.
And since you mentioned The New Leaf and Boat was kind of saying, he's Walter Matthau, I do think there is a real twist on the Walter Matthau performance in A New Leaf if you haven't seen it, because he's much playing this like wannabe rich playboy, and it's a much more of a mannered performance than I think we're used to being given a great one. So I recommend that.
He is great in A New Leaf.
Oh, you did see it? Okay, yeah.
I have.
All right. Number 6.
My number 6, I'm pretty sure is going to get yikes. It's Paul Newman.
Yikes!
Figured.
Wow, that's the pick. That's the movie.
Yeah, it is. My number 5 is the one that everyone was expecting from me. It's Audrey Hepburn.
Yikes.
Figured as much. And my number 4 is Humphrey Bogart, and I picked In a Lonely Place.
That's also a yikes.
I'm done for now.
Hey, that was quick. All right.
My 7 is a yikes from earlier. I picked Katherine Hepburn for Bringing Up Baby.
Hey!
Yeah, I think this is... I haven't seen, like, some of her other, like, well-known... Like, I haven't seen Lion and Winter. That's kind of a big one. But she is she takes over this movie. She is so much fun in this movie. I think this is the best performance I've seen from her. But she is kind of like who I first think of when I think of like classic actress. Like she just kind of has that larger than life personality. Like she's obviously, of course, associated in like the screwball comedies, but you look at something like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, where the scene where she fires her employee, that's such a great scene. And she's great and everything, but I think Bringing Up Baby is just where she really gets to show up off her comedy chops like the best. Like she's very funny in like Philadelphia Story and some others, but like I think this is the funniest and the most like fully realized character I've seen from her. I think she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's one of those. I think a majority of the picks that I made were people who could do really well in both comedy and drama. And Katherine Hepburn is absolutely one of those people. Like look at her in The African Queen. Like she's fantastic in that. And then Paul, don't give me that look. But then you see Bringing Up Baby, and the swinging door Susie bit is just one of the funniest scenes in the history of film. Like the way that she's able to control that scene and deliver the dialogue the way that she does with such elegance and poise and precision, it's incredible. Like you need people like that in order to make that kind of dialogue work, and she was one of the best at it. So I agree with most of what Boat said. Boat took most of the words right out of my mouth.
Kat Hep, a actor I have a lot of admiration for, and I watched tons of her movies. And I had a conversation with some scumbum named Lucas Schoedbach about you heard me. Luke asshole Schoedbach.
That guy.
Yeah, that guy. And we were trying to come up with like what is the right pick for Katherine Hepburn. I think we kind of came up with Philadelphia Story, but once this came up, I'm like, no, I think you're right. Like specifically because I feel like this is someone coming out with the most extreme version of what the identity is often portrayed as. She kind of takes that upper class kind of waspy persona in the most exaggerated, goofy, flamboyant fashion. But at the beginning of her career, like before she could even be like attached to that, and then she was able to tone down. But she just took the identity so well, and it's honestly so funny, and she controls the speed and tone of that movie. And Cary Grant honestly is just trying to catch up the whole time to what she's doing. African Queen was almost discussed in the show, and that's why Kirk got kicked off. It wasn't allowed. That movie not good, and kind of very basic level performances for both of the actors. Okay, Paul, what's your thoughts on Kat Hep?
Yeah, thank God nobody picked African Queen. That movie's boring as shit.
I agreed, but she's the best part of it.
I love Katherine Hepburn. To me, I could have picked like 50 actors for this list. Ultimately, this is basically just like who are your guys? That's what this episode is essentially. And Hepburn is just like kind of on the outside a little bit for me. I think Philadelphia Story or Lion in Winter would have been more my picks. I think because Lion in Winter is like the most actory performance that she's probably ever given, and she's really great in that. But I think in Philadelphia Story, the way that the story orbits around her versus like Bringing Up Baby, she's like the Tasmanian devil, basically like ruining this guy's life, and she's great as that. But I love that Philadelphia Story is about her charm and her humor and her wit, and it's like who among us would not be obsessed with Katherine Hepburn in the Philadelphia Story? But I think that like those are kind of a little more my speed. But yeah, she's an amazing actress, really funny. I love the way that she commands the movies that she's in this era, like in the way that I think actresses are not always really allowed to, but she takes control of the movie and kind of like makes it hers in a way that I think is really great. So yeah, great pick.
I will say, if you have her and not the Cheeto on your list, you may lose some points.
Leopard. It's a goddamn leopard.
God damn it. I'm leaving. Oh, I love animals. Okay. What about your number?
My six is Lee J. Cobb, represented by 12 Angry Men.
There it is. It's the most community pick and most boat pick ever. But go on.
Yeah, yes. But Lee J. Cobb, I think, is just one of those, like, not just classic character actors, but just character actors I love. Like, in terms of supporting roles, he just shows up and he knows when to just kind of support, and he knows when to take center stage. And I think that is like what makes him one of those great actors. Like you look at his like big scene stealing roles in like 12 Angry Men or On the Waterfront, but you also look in like it's the Three Faces of Eve, which is not a great movie, but he knows how to work off of Joanne Woodward. Or again, not a great movie, but he's great in it. Exodus. He is actually really good because he knows.
I thought you were about to say that. I thought you were about to say The Exorcist. I was like, hot take. Sorry.
No, he's good in Exorcist. That doesn't count for this because it's 70s. Yeah. Exodus, not a great movie. He knows how to work off of Paul Newman. But juror number 3, you need someone who you completely represents the other side and is the complete antithesis of Henry Fonda's character in every way. And his big monologue towards the end, just incredible. But every moment, even when he is like just talking at the beginning to juror number 2, he just asserts this dominance throughout the whole film, which I just think really works. He is just fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, so I feel like I was giving you shit for even in my own mind for just like me associating Lee Cobb with you so much that I might have been dismissing the pick, maybe a little too much because especially in 12 Angry Men it is such a dynamic performance. When you have the movies that kind of in one room, contained movies, you need the star power to carry it and to keep the attention. I mean, Sadie Lumet's doing really interesting things for such a contained movie, but Lee Cobb is helping keep your attention through these long moments of dialogue because he has such conviction, such power. He's honestly, we talk about like movie stars versus actors, and he's a real movie star for a character actor. Like he has character actor, but with like movie style persona and delivery in a way that's really important. So he can come in and steal those one scenes. Powerful movie, great face. And I talk often about how like classic Hollywood faces, we just don't have them like they used to in a way that's really interesting. So it's my pick. I mean, that's your pick. I don't pick shit. Good pick. Everybody else on DJ Cobb.
90% of the time, I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
That is like too accurate for where I'm pretty convinced my mind is going. Okay. Everybody else on Lee.
Goes fucking funny. So I really like Lee J. Cobb. He was on my short list. I just haven't seen enough of the films that he's in as much as I really love him. And he was one of those really respected actors at the time. Like, he wasn't like a big movie star, but he was a really well-respected actor.
Yeah, I might not have him on my list, but I'm entitled to my opinion. No, I mean, I love Lee J. Cobb. I think he's underrated. I think in Coogan's Bluff, if anyone's seen that, the Clint Eastwood movie, he plays kind of more the straight man that kind of Clint Eastwood is playing off of and being the kind of more roguish detective. But I think that he's a terrifically expressive actor. He reminds me a lot of Sidney Greenstreet, who's like in Casablanca, as like these kind of character actors who really play loud, but know exactly, they're not on screen. I mean, 12 Angry Men he is, but they're not always on screen a ton, but they make the most of their time in a way that I think like makes it super memorable. And like, you're not going to watch a movie with Lee J. Cobb in it and not be like, and not notice him. He's never going to blend in. And so, for some people, maybe that doesn't totally work, but I think he's great at it.
Great. Okay, Boat, number 5.
My number 5 is Marlon Brando, represented by A Streetcar Named Desire. I think that... What? Oh, yeah. That's weird. But, yeah, Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire, I think I kind of get why no one else had him, because I do think like some of his best work is like the 70s stuff, but I still think his 50s and 60s stuff is so strong. Like you look at like The Wild One, you look at On the Waterfront, you look at like like even his version of Mutiny on the Bounty. It's weird that he's Fletcher Christian in that version, but still he's actually good in it. You look at him as Mark Antony in Julius Caesar. I think, but this is I'm gonna be one of the great actors' performances. Like just him as Stanley Kowalski, he just explodes. Like, everyone talks about Stella, but, like, he just had so many moments in this movie where he just kills it. Brando, just, there's a reason, like, his style of acting really kind of is what was emulated later, that Kaminsky method.
So Brando, not one of my guys, and I'm gonna just kind of say why. This is who are my guys episode. Two of our like most notable of all time, not the most, but two of the most notable of all time method actors, Marlon Brando and Joaquin Phoenix, I think have a lot in common in their performances, and they get so into the darkness of the soul that I think they forget that sometimes you need like a little bit of like light and humanity to come out. That it's like a little too much of a performance I'm like uncomfortable being around. Even in Streetcar Named Desire, he's just a little too like grimy and loafy for like my attention. You don't say charm in Marlon Brando. Even like in the 70s performances, I feel like he's doing a lot, and he's really, going down into one specific aspect of that performance. Maybe a little too much. I like understand the acclaim, but like when people got to Dr. Moreau and they're like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" I was like, "Don't you realize this is the same performance he's been given for 40 years?"
Wow.
Not that bad. Wow. I don't hate him, and I understand it. Streetcar.
He said 40, so this is before that. So big break.
Yeah, it is before that, and this is also a streetcar named Desire, which is like a street.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
You have to make sure you park on the left side of the street because a streetcar named Desire is coming to clean the streets. Anyways, this movie I think is an important. It's a good pick for him because it is much more of a grounded, play level where he gets to play a real human and not a fucking, alien stuck in the Amazon River, in the jungle. It's not the Amazon River. Play that clip again. I'm losing my fucking mind. Anyways. Solid pick. Koho is walking around half naked. I can't deal with that. Okay.
He's not half.
His arms are half his body.
Much arms.
He's 3/4 naked.
He's like Goro. Yeah, he's like all arms.
Okay. Everybody else on Brando, what's the deal?
Bar, go ahead.
Okay, so
all right, hold on. Thank you, Video Store, for the raid and the stream.
Hey guys. So here's something that's going to surprise people. This is one of two movies that I'm pretty sure are going to come up tonight that I haven't seen yet. This is a big blind spot for me in my classic films. However,
how do you know the movie's going to come out tonight? The Cody Newberry rule of not sharing lists.
Because one of them is obvious, and this one.
I did not share my list, for the record.
I did not share my list either. But On the Waterfront is one of my favorite performances of all time. Just the scene where he's talking to Edie and he's like fiddling with her glove is such a pure moment caught on film. As I said in the chat, Bo forgot to mention Guys and Dolls, which
or did he choose to omit?
He's better than he had any right to be, but even though he's not great. But yeah, I agree. I think most of the stuff that I probably know him best for is in the 70s, which is why I kind of didn't include him.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Chuck Lorre taking a lot of inspiration for the Kaminsky method from Marlon Brando's acting. No, sorry. No, I
never give Chuck Lorre any props on that.
I think Brando's a guy that takes big swings, and sometimes it really hits, and sometimes he's like doing stuff like he's doing in Sayonara, which is like, I think he's fucking terrible in that movie, I think. So that's kind of the reason I left him off, honestly. I'm not the kind of person who's like, I love his later work the most more than the other stuff, because I think his best work is in this era. But I just think like it can really hit like On the Waterfront, or it can really miss. I don't love him in Streetcar, honestly. I don't love that kind of acting really very much. I think it's like too theatery in a way that I don't necessarily connect to. But I mean, he's obviously a terrific actor. And there's obviously like lots of movies that I do love him in. But yeah, like I think he just like his hit rate is not high enough, I think, for me to have him on this list.
I need to watch Last Tango in Paris and watch him fuck to really form an opinion.
That that movie.
Thank you. Wait, before we move on, I have a very important question. Is I am giving letter grades for each pick. This answer to this question does affect your letter grade. Did you pick A Streetcar Named Desire because you already used On the Waterfront, or is that your honest pick for?
So I did have a one movie rule, but I think Brando is better in Streetcar than On the Waterfront. But I did try to pick one movie per person. One person. I tried not to double up on movies. I will say I did it later. I didn't do it for this.
Okay.
Malarkey.
My four is Shirley MacLaine for The Apartment.
Yikes.
Nice. So, Paul, 2 for your 7 through 4.
Yeah. So my number 7, someone I really got into last year. My number 7 is Joan Crawford. The movie is Mildred Pierce. So last year, Criterion Channel put like a bunch of her movies on there. There's like 20 movies. I watched like 15 of them because I had seen her in almost nothing. And to me, she is one of the best eye actors that there have ever been. The expressiveness that she gives with her eyes are kind of unlike any actor I've ever seen. I think when you see the stirring emotion with her, and I think this is her greatest performance. I think it's got so many of the levels that make her such an incredible actress because she's playing someone who is difficult to some people, but also is hurt and pained, but does express emotions and does have these connections. I mean, if you haven't seen this movie, it features a character that is probably the reincarnation of Satan. I will not give any more spoilers if you haven't seen it, but I think it's a movie that really frames her performance in an interesting way because it sets her up as one thing, and she really is revealed to be something else, kind of, and changed as the movie goes on. But I think she's she's so good in stuff like Johnny Guitar and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. But she's one of my favorite. I mean, one of my favorites, obviously, because she's on this list. But I just think, like, again, like the way she moves, like, emotes with her face and especially her eyes are like really special and really unlike other classic actresses I think in this era. And there's so many moments in these movies that I think like she is just like anytime she's on the screen your eyes are glued to her, which is kind of a quality you really need in this era. But yeah, Joan Crawford, one of my absolute favorites. She's so good at this movie.
God damn it, Boatman to me is 11-2. What are you guys doing? Okay, so Joan Crawford, great pick. And I want to say that I feel like I had this real unfair bias because she has kind of a messy personal life. And, a lot of it was unfairly highlighted by Fate on the Way of Mommy Dearest. And for like 30 years, all I knew was my mom quoting hanger lines from Mommy Dearest. That's like was how I related to Joan Crawford. And once I really gave her a chance, because the first movie I watched with her is A Woman's Face, which is just like a great like classic thriller and performance and just like some of the best thriller action directing near the end of that movie. And then I watched Mildred Pierce, and it's just a phenomenal performance. She has a lot of glamour that I think is often associated with her. She's one, that's a lot of classic actresses, but I think she really carries it. And so she's playing this kind of, middle class, to start off poor, but working her way up kind of mom. And she's too like beautiful and glamorous to be that too Hollywoodish, but she really like pulls it off in a relatable way, in an extremely sympathetic way. There's so much empathy in this performance because it's a character that, doesn't make decisions that you could always or think are right, or you can definitely judge as being like stepped all over by the people around her, really taken advantage of in a way, but she had so much sympathy to what she's going through that you really, fall for this character and her thing. And this movie will come back when my next show, when I host, when I'm definitely going to be in my inevitable reappearance of worst children in movies. It is top tier, horrible children. And I'm going to find red flags to know if I need to get rid of Theo before he becomes in this movie.
I would hop on that episode in an instant.
really terrific performance. And you mentioned the eyes. She has a lot of work there and how she reacts to things. Everybody else in Joan Crawford.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Bart.
No, you're fine. I'm going to keep this short because I've only seen her in one movie, and that's 1939's. No, 1939's The Women, which she's really good in. But I literally have like nothing else to base an opinion on.
I've only seen 2 movies of hers. One of them is this. The other is Grand Hotel. But she's really good in this. I honestly want to rewatch Mildred Pierce. I watched it this year, but I was under the impression that movie was something completely different.
But that's what's so exciting. That's what's cool about it. It's like you think this thing, and it's like
but like now I feel like I can appreciate it more now that I know what it actually is. Instead of like I expected the thriller, to be honest.
Yeah, it's framed as a noir, but really is a character drama.
Yeah, but she's great in it. She deserved her Oscar. She's fantastic. I think I just haven't seen enough of her. Like, she's good in Grand Hotel, but she's like far from like my favorite thing about Grand Hotel. Lana Barrymore's the best thing in Grand Hotel, but she's good in this, so probably fair pick.
She elevates so many like mediocre to like generic thrillers that she's in that just become like solid good movies because she's so good in them.
I was so hoping that Boat would say that his favorite part of Grand Hotel was how grand the hotel was. I'm disappointed in you.
And I will
it's not even that grand of a hotel, to be honest.
I will say I think I watched 10 movies for this episode tonight, and this is my favorite of the night. So good pick.
Nice. All right.
Number 6.
My number 6 is the Jackson Miller. Number 6 is Burt Lancaster. Also, same movie, The Sweet Smell of Success. Sweet Smell of Success. I think Burt Lancaster is one of our most powerful and commanding actors that we have ever had. I think like when he is talking, everyone in the room of the movie feels like they're instantly listening or paying attention to him. And I love in this movie that he oftentimes refuses to make eye contact with people when he's talking to them or talking about them. And he'll just stare kind of into the middle distance, and you just see this serious, well-worn look on his face. And that's something that I think he's really mastered as an actor in general, like not just in this movie, but to me, this is like his most interesting performance because you know so much about this character before you meet him, and he's built up, but he lives up totally to all the things that people talk about him. And he is this kind of terrifying force that everyone feels like they have to bow to. You know, people are like, they'll talk shit about him when he's not there, but then as soon as they're face-to-face, all of a sudden they're super nice to him. And I think because he commands that kind of presence. But him as an actor, I mean, in Stuff from Here to Eternity, like he's like a great romantic lead. I think like the way that he commits to stuff like that. I mean, in like stuff like The Swimmer, in kind of later performances, like in Local Hero and Atlantic City, like he's really great in both of those movies, I think. And Birdman of Alcatraz that Boatman mentioned earlier, he's so good in. But I think just as an actor, he's such. I mean, this is one of his movies, but he's such a brute force of an actor. I think that he'll walk into a room and again, like everything is just centered on him, and I think the way he commands the screen is incredible. And this movie fucking rules, and is like one of the most amazingly cynical movies I've ever seen. But yeah, Burt Lancaster is one of our great, powerful actors, I think, ever.
Yeah, so this is the only movie I've seen.
Well, Boat goes
for Burt Lancaster.
Yeah, because I had it.
Boat also had it.
Boat had him. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
Go.
How does this show work?
Lancaster is fantastic in Sweet Smell of Success. Very commanding. I don't want to talk too much about Sweet Smell of Success, though, because more people need to see that movie. I don't believe, unless I just zoned out when Paul said it. Did you mention Elmer Gantry?
No, I like him in that, but it's not my favorite.
Fair. I think he kills it in Elmer Gantry. Like, he is just so fiery at moments, but also so shady. He really plays so many different, like, phases. And then you look at, like, Birdman of Alcatraz, where you basically just see him go from, like, the very, like, kind of powerful performance and that slowly just being withered down through the passage of time. It's really one of, like, the most, like, convincing, like, 20, 30-year plus performances I've seen from an actor of just, like, legitimately looking like they have aged, like, not just through makeup, but, like, just the performance itself. Birdman of Alcatraz is a great movie. John Frankenheimer was 1962. It was a great year for John Frankenheimer. But yeah, like, he's great in that. He doesn't have, like, a scene-stealing performance in the movie, but he's really good in Judgment at Nuremberg. Just like his final moments where he was like, yeah, I did do something wrong, is one of the best scenes in that movie.
Spoiler for Judgment Night. No, I'm just kidding.
Spoiler! The Nazis did the bad thing. Oh.
So Burt Lancaster and Sweet Smell.
I haven't even seen it.
What is happening? Okay.
What
Burt
did
Lancaster
you do?
Sweet Smell of Success. Do you know how long I've worked at pronouncing the word success? It's really hard for me.
I don't want to.
Were you successful in being able to do it?
Yeah, so I went to speech therapy. We just worked on the word success for 8 years. So anyway, Burt Lancaster in this, I think what's really interesting is comparing him to what Tony Curtis is doing on screen the whole time. Oh, yeah, I am. Anyways, Tony Curtis is like giving this really kind of scummy, wild, chaotic performance, and Burt Lancaster comes in with like so much control and changes the whole dynamic of what's happening on screen. And there's like the power is never even questioned by what he is, giving at the time. You can see him as this, newspaper, writer gone, over famous newspaper writer gone, like crime lord of the city without the actual like crime parts in a way. That is really just by his presence, and I think the broadness of his shoulders definitely like play into that. Because you look at his face, he's like a little dorky, but he can have the power to counteract that. And I think that dorkiness is important to also bring the intelligence to a screen that you still there, because you can also buy him as someone who is strategic and able to pull that. I'm interested in watching him in something, like From Here to Eternity. Is he like having sexy time in that? I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, I want to see him in a romantic version of that, because that would be a completely different performance. I will say I have this weird obsession, especially with oh my gosh, I am losing my goddamn mind. Billy Wilder. There we go. Billy Wilder movies. This is why I don't play trivia anymore. With Billy Wilder's like obsession with insurance is like always fascinating to me. That like insurance to them is like the greatest detectives. And this movie, not Billy Wilder, but this movie is like journalists, the greatest crime lords. they're the celebrities and the mafiosos of the 40s. And the 40s whack. Or 50, this is 60s, right? But
no,
classic
50s.
Okay. The classic Hollywood. What a whack time for like identity of jobs. Anybody else? Or bar on Lancaster?
So I double checked. I've only seen 3 Burt Lancaster films. But he, first of all, for Boat to say he doesn't have a scene-stealing scene in Judgment at Nuremberg is wrong.
That sounds like I said it's not a scene-stealing performance in that he's very subtle for most of the movie.
I kind of disagree with that, but because he's like one of the 2 people I think of when I think of that movie. But he does. Both. Jesus Christ. Both. This is a Wendy's. So. Shut the fuck up.
Guys, you don't have to fight every time you're on YLF together. I promise. You don't have to do it.
That's what the people come to see, Paul. But he really does have that like booming, registering like voice that really does like command your attention, and it's just the way he uses his words as well. Yeah, I think this is a great pick. I just need to see more of him.
Does Twitch bleep out the word sexy? Get together, Twitch. This doesn't need to be that. It's a sexy ass Ford. So. It's just star ass Ford. I don't.
Oh wow.
Chill out. Okay. Do I have any idea where you are? Your next pick, Paul.
Yeah. So my number 5 is recently her birthday actually. So happy belated birthday. Number 5 is Ingrid Bergman. The movie's Notorious.
I know that here.
I know that obviously Casablanca is like the famous Ingrid Bergman performance, but I think this is the one that channels so many of her strengths. I think even better. The way that her emotions can change on a dime, and the way that she can either be totally soulless and dead in the eyes to being fully emotional and wrapped up in love. I think those 2 levels that she plays and the way she kind of flits between them is incredible. The scene on the plane where she finds out about her dad and you just see her kind of stare into the seat in front of her with no emotions. And then when you contrast that to near the end where she sees Cary Grant and all of a sudden she has this like excitement and her vitality is like returned to her, I think is why she's like so incredible in this movie specifically. But I mean, she is just like all-time charm fest, I think, in any movie. I think she's like so commanding as a presence, and she really maintained it throughout her whole career. Obviously it's not in the classic era, but even like her Autumn Sonata, which is like her late career performance, she's like fucking incredible in that movie. But I think that she is like one of the best ideals of like what a classic actress is. I think when you have the class and the beauty, but also the intelligence and the emotional capability to tap into something dark, but also something sad. And she does all of those in this movie kind of wrapped into one, which is why I think this is like the quintessential Ingrid Bergman performance. But I mean, she's so great in so many different things that recently they had like a run on TCM with a bunch of her movies, and I finally got to see some of them, like stuff that I'd never seen before. And she's great in like all of them, like even movies that you probably have like never heard of. I'm like, wow, Ingrid Bergman is like amazing in all of these, and she's just like, again, an all-time great. I mean, she's also amazing in Casablanca. Like that's not it's not understated, but yeah, she's just like one of the most perfect like classic movie stars, especially, but also she's like an incredible actress at the same time.
Yeah. So everyone's excuse for this better just be like, I've only seen Casablanca, because that's the only excuse I'm going to allow. Because Ingrid Bergman, Notorious is my second favorite Hitchcock movie after Vertigo. I mean, she really is a large part of that. You kind of capture that she's the quintessential classic actress. And I think because she can handle a close-up like no one else, just looks absolutely beautiful, but still captured so much emotion on that screen as well with when you get up to it. But also there's a worldliness to her. I think that it comes a lot from her kind of background and her cultural background that I think adds to the kind of intelligence and the kind of like empathetic glow that I think she kind of carries. But in this performance is, you said she can kind of show the like kind of lack of empathy and lack of soul at times, because she's really playing, the mystery of it all, of like, whose side is she on, what is her true role within this movie. It was also done really well when Marion Cotillard did Ingrid Bergman in the movie Allied. That was also a really good performance. Everybody watch Allied. Justice for Allied. But yeah, Ingrid Bergman, what a great one we have here. Everybody else, what the fuck? Why do you hate the Berg?
Bar's muted and he's talking.
No, let him count down while looking down and realize he is muted.
Don't put me on trial.
Okay, Bar, get together.
Notorious, Spellbound, Gaslight, Cactus Flower. Koho, add those all to my list.
Well, Spellbound's fucking impossible to find. Spellbound, you have to like watch like illegally. Like, there's no way to watch Spellbound. Like,
yeah. But I honestly, out of her classic era, Casablanca is the only one I've seen.
I have seen Casablanca, Cactus Flower, and Gaslight. She's great in Gaslight. Cactus Flower is never, like, she's good in it, but that's not a performance that's, like, going to get you on the list of classic actors. Like, for me, she's good in it. Like, Goldie Hawn is the only person who was incredible in that movie. So, like, only having two, like, great performances to really look at is what kept her off, but she's great in Gaslight and she's great in Casablanca.
But Karl Malden, here we go. You're a great priest. All right.
Because Karl Malden,
unnecessary.
Oh, I forgot about this.
Don't disrespect Karl Malden.
All right, moving on to
my Bells of St. Mary.
My number 4, which is a bit interesting because my favorite performance actually not from the classic era, but I still think that he qualifies for the list. My number 4 is William Holden. The film is The Wild Bunch. To me, William Holden is one of the best actors at like having this weariness on his face. Like, even in his early career roles, it just feels like he's so fucking tired and he's so over whatever situation he's in, but he still kind of pushes through. And I think that really shows in this movie more than anything. I mean, this is like the ultimate, like, getting the gang together, one last ride kind of movie. And I think like the way that kind of Sam Peckinpah shaped this character to kind of be like William Holden a little bit, sort of his persona, but then the way that he kind of turns that a little bit on its head, especially as this movie kind of goes into its latter half, is really amazing. I mean, I somewhat famously love Solid 17. I think he's really great in that. But I think that The Wild Bunch is the performance that channels his great strengths as an actor. And I think, I mean, he's great in stuff like Sunset Boulevard, obviously. But I think that like this is one of those movies that I think captures a lot of the different types of things he plays really well. And it is like also this kind of metatextual thing about his career and his life in a way. And I mean, he can be a great romantic lead when he needs to be. But again, I think just in general, like the way that he plays Haggard is like very special. And like it's hard to play that and to still feel like you're interesting and engaged. But I think he really pulls it off. And I mean, just like one of my favorite actors, obviously, of all time, period. He's so good in this movie and just an incredible actor overall. Yeah, William Holden.
Yeah, so this was a real like spotlight on what his career would become as it was moving into the 70s. Because it's a real evolution from his, more charming and, not suave, but like in Stalag, at least he's like that like bad boy charmer in a way that I think he carried, and a little bit of that in Sabrina I feel like as well, but more of the stereotype of what a lead man can go, bring movie star power, and then you get to Wild Bunch. He's a little older, he's a little more worn down, and he carries on screen, and that's the whole dynamic of these movies. The Western lifestyle on its way out, all these kind of old men on their like last hurrah, all just like a little bit tired, living out their glory days in kind of a way that I think he, carries in the face as, in his posture and how he sits. And he still like is as like the leader of the group, has that real like leadership qualities and the nobility that makes that make sense as well. But yeah, I love Wild Bunch. I really need to rewatch the Wild Bunch. Have we done a Westerns episode of Wild West? I want to watch a whole bunch of Westerns. That needs to happen sometime soon.
And I think he's better than Guinness in Bridge on the River Kwai, personally. I think he's more engaging.
I agree. I actually agree.
I agree. And not to like spoil future picks, he's better than Bogart and Sabrina as well, but Bogart is like a great performance. But when you're better than Guinness and Bogart, that's doing something. William Holm, solid pick. I feel like I was grading this up fairly first because I know I just don't love his performance in Network as much, but that's the 70s, so it doesn't count. So I'm going to ignore that.
Hurts.
Okay, anybody else on William Holden, who you all made very sure that this was your number 11 pick, so go on. Both of you sent me the same text message.
Oh, really? Yeah. I legit sent Zack a message going, by the way, because I know it'll come up, William Holden was my number 11.
Same.
He was my last cut. As much as I don't think it's his best performance, my favorite performance of his is in Sabrina. Even though I would probably argue that his best performance that I've seen, at least, is Starlight 17. Yeah, no, he's just fantastic. There's just a way that he carries and presents himself that is really charming and draws you in, but there's an underlying sadness to him, which is not it's not very present, but it's there. You get that sensation and that feeling in his performances. So yeah, he's definitely top 15 material. Some would say top 11 material.
Yeah. I haven't seen Wild Bunch. He's fantastic in Slag 17. That's my favorite performance from him. I think the way he just has this like facade of being nonchalant while actually like kind of playing chess with everybody is really great. But he's fantastic in a lot of things. Honestly, I think the thing that kind of took him a little bit down, just a few points down, is that I just associate him more with some of the 70s stuff like Network, and I had to discount his performance in Fedora, to discount his performance. Even though like the movie itself not great, I did discount his performance. He is the best part in Towering Inferno. He is actually great in that movie, even though I don't love that movie.
Okay,
he's fantastic in that.
Fire is the best part in Towering Inferno. Let's give the fire due credit.
It really isn't. It's bad fire.
Wow.
But yeah, no,
wow.
like he was.
We're sorry to the family of the fire.
I'm not.
Well, we didn't start it, so it's fine. We didn't start it.
Don't start Boatman on that. He has prepared verses.
All right, moving on.
No, you do that yourself. I cover your mouth. You flail like a fish. I hurt my leg on the desk. So that's your own fault. Moving on.
Okay.
It's not my fault. I have.
Wow. We're moving quick. We're at the bars 3 already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're flying.
I was predicting under 60 minutes when Kirk got down, so that failed. Okay, number 3. Bar, hit me.
My number 3 was a Yanks from earlier. It is Shirley MacLaine. I also picked The Apartment. As of this moment, Shirley MacLaine is my second favorite actress of all time. There's just the way that she's able to balance just this utter beaming charm that she has with a great level of sadness in some of her films like The Apartment and The Children's Hour. and even a little bit of Irma Ladouce. But then, like, I don't want to get too much into her, like, later stuff, but she's also really good at playing, like, the curmudgeonly person, and in roles like Postcards from the Edge. But The Apartment is the one where it's just everything that makes Shirley MacLaine such a great actress, just present. Like, the scene with the broken mirror, one of my favorite deliveries of a line of all time is when she says, "It makes me look the way I feel." It's such a great delivery. And she makes you fall in love with her, but sympathize with her. Like, the subtle heartbreak that she has when Fred McMurray's character is having that conversation with her in the restaurant. It's just heartbreaking. And it's just the way that she makes you fall in love with her. Even in movies that aren't good, like Sweet Charity, she's always one of the best parts.
Choose my 4. Honestly, the thing that kind of brought her down is I wish I would have waited like a week to watch Around the World in 80 Days, because in her defense, no one's good in that movie.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's great.
Fantastic, in fact.
Anyway, Shirley MacLaine, she is just one of those great classic actresses. Like, you look at, like, The Apartment. I think in terms of, like, classic actresses, she was one of the first, maybe not the first, but I feel like a lot of the classic actresses, they kind of have to either be, like, usually these kind of larger than life personalities. And I think while she can definitely play those, she's really great at having these really subtle performances where she does and says a lot by not doing and saying a lot. And I think you look at, like, something like Irma Ladouce, you look at, like, some of her great comedy work. She is super funny in What a Way to Go. What a Way to Go is just a really underrated movie that more people need to see. It's super funny if you haven't seen that. She essentially plays a woman who has had 5 husbands, and they have all, like, died in interesting ways. And it's actually, like, it's a dark comedy. It's very funny. But she's great in a lot of films. I think one of just the very unique classic actresses that there's a reason she was able to have such a great career going into, her older generation. Like, you even look at Bernie. I think she's really great in Bernie.
She's one of those actresses that, like, every 5 to 10 years will come out like, I'm still around, I'm still alive, everybody, and give a pretty stellar performance. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not appearing on YOS for 10 more years. I'm just going to be like, I'm still alive, friends. This show runs for 10 more years. What is happening to our society? Okay. Shirley MacLaine.
The show is all I got.
No, I feel so bad for you, Bard. You need to talk after this show.
I do too.
Okay. Shirley MacLaine, this is one I'm really, like, troubled in how I feel about this being this high, because I think this is, like, a perfect performance, just a top tier performance. But I'm not as in love with a lot of her other. I think she's, like, maybe bad in Irma Ladouce. I'm really battling. I feel like she's, like, really, really broad in a way that does not hit for me. I think she's missing the notes. So I don't think she's someone that always works. But kind of where I came around, we were going to talk about Audrey Hepburn later, and I had to make some decisions. I don't want to spoil or master the list, but I was trying to compare Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine. I had to just immediately think about The Children's Hour, and I think she's so much better than Audrey Hepburn. Hepburn's bad in that movie, but MacLaine, I think when they're put face to face, I think was able to give, a lot more of a, like, emotionally raw and real performance than Hepburn, was ever able to give. I'm not trying to make that as a hit against her. That's just not her strength. But and that's here too. She's like in a way, I don't want to say the original Manic Pixie Dream Girl, because that's really, we already talked about it. That's Katherine Hepburn in Bringing Up Baby, in a lot of ways. But this is, I think, the, like, finest Manic Pixie Dream. I hate that phrase because I think it's very dismissive, and I honestly find it a little horrible to women in a way of, like, that I think it's supposed to be dismissive of the way men write women, but there is like any female that is kind of whimsical in a way. I think sometimes it dismisses them as not real people and not real feeling people. And I think Truman Mclean in this is a perfect example of she has that kind of whimsy, that kind of chaoticness and the fury, but she has such a real emotional internal gears working there at all times. Even she's like, this is, how I function. You're making jokes. You're trying to be upbeat. That's a cover up for like everything deep, dark that she's going through. And it comes out near the end of the apartment to, carry the dramatic heft. And she can be that fun, charming, adorable woman. And then you just get the heartbreak and you really feel for what she becomes, the suicidal, unrequited love woman at the end. I know I talk a lot of trash about Billy Wilder, which I never really mean. It's really trash against the community, not Wilder as a director. But the Apartment is a great movie. It's a perfect performance. So I have to still give a lot of credit to this book.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, it's just me. I think. I mean, I guess for some reason she just is not one of my favorites. Like, even though I do like her in a lot of stuff, I think she's really. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Some Came Running, which is like a kind of underrated Vincent Minnelli movie. She's really, really good in that. I think she's really funny in The Trouble with Harry. But honestly, I think my favorite performance from her is probably in terms of endearment, which is why maybe she got knocked out a little bit for me. I think she's so good in that. But I mean, this is a great performance. This is basically a perfect movie. I don't know why. I'd never really considered her for the Midas, but I guess I just didn't. But she's great in mostly everything. I think. I don't think I agree about the children's hour thing. I actually don't love her in that movie. But I like her a lot in general. I think she's like pretty much always hitting.
Number 3 for Boat.
My 3 is Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yikes!
Sure. Okay, Paul.
My number 3 is a yikes from earlier. Same movie, Humphrey Bogart, In a Lonely Place. This is just one of my favorite movies. I've had it on this show before, but I think that I love the way that he plays this like really weird and dark and detached guy who then becomes changed when he meets Gloria Graham's character, and the way that he evolves over the course of the film, I think is really fascinating. But I mean, him as a movie star, I mean, he's just someone I love to hear talk. I love the way he delivers lines. And like, I feel like any movie he's in, I could listen to just as like a podcast and it would be perfectly entertaining, I think. But he just is so convincing as this sort of like too cool for romance, even though he really is invested. Same thing in Casablanca, obviously. This guy who's been hurt before and doesn't want to open himself up again. I think that's like his greatest strength as an actor. And this is like kind of that distilled into one movie. And it's like, it's got that kind of dark heart a lot of his movies have. But I think him as an actor in general is just so powerful and commanding. And he's got great chemistry with every actress, I feel like, that he's in movies with. It doesn't matter if it's, Gloria Graham in this or Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca, or even, I think he's got good chemistry, even though I don't love African Queen, obviously, the movie itself. And obviously with Lauren Bacall and all their collaborations. But I think he's an actor that I think over the span of his career has just done so many interesting things. He's great in his last movie, The Harder They Fall. He's really fucking good in that movie. But I think he's just he makes every movie he's in watchable, I think, which is a really like powerful thing. I think Maltese Falcon with the lesser actor is just kind of okay, but it becomes really good, I think, because he really kind of commands this kind of performance that makes you kind of pull in and listen to what he's saying. But yeah, I love to hear him talk. It's the way he delivers dialogue, I think, is like maybe my favorite of any actor ever. So yeah, Humphrey Bogart is the fucking coolest, one of the coolest dudes that there ever was.
Yeah, and I had the same movie. I also had Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart is one of those actors that plays to the back of the room, but he does it in such an earnest, commanding way that you can't help but to like pay attention to him. Even in things like we brought up Sabrina earlier, which he's really charming in. Then there's things like Dark Passage, where he's like great in that movie. Even when you're not seeing him, you're just like hearing his voice and how he's delivering the lines. But I picked In a Lonely Place because Humphrey Bogart is. I'm gonna become like actor pretentious guy here for a second, but anger is a hard emotion to portray when it comes to acting because it's a secondary emotion. It stems from another place, and I think Humphrey Bogart is a really smart actor. He seems to have really understood that. So when he's playing like the very angry, violent side in this movie, it seems to stem from a real place, and it's just a hard thing to do sometimes. And for him to pull it off as amazingly as he did, especially in the murder interpretation scene, it's just fantastic.
I'm going to have some comparisons to this performance with something we're going to announce later, as far as like how someone portrays essentially what is a mental illness in a way. His kind of anger is in this, I think, could be classified along those lines, because I think he does it in such a natural, a fashion that you can really, or you're unexpecting who this guy truly is. So when this comes out and he's showing those signs, it doesn't come out from nowhere, but it's still surprising and shocking. But also he has enough connective ties that when you think about it, like seems right and seems real, and it's just like how you deal with it in real life. The people who deal with anger management struggles, it can come from nowhere, but when you think about it, like it's always kind of there. It's always boiling underneath, bubbling underneath, and in that performance, I think from first scene, there's really a little bit of that bubbling that just comes out the times that's necessary. And I think, like my instinct when you say Bogart is it has to be Casablanca. Why is it not Casablanca? Like that's one this most famous performances of all time. But watching this, there is so much nuance. You say he's acting for the back of the crowd, but I think in this movie he's honestly not. I think it's a lot a little lower, a little quieter than all those are, a little less Hollywood shine to it, because he's really playing a shithead that doesn't think he's a shithead, doesn't want to be a shithead, which is really important. You can see he's like feeling the guilt and the pain when he acts out in these ways. That's really real, because I was trying to think, when else did he really play someone violent and mean? And you can say Treasure Your Madre is definitely that, but the violence is something he devolves into. Like he doesn't start off as that person and the situation turns him this, but this is that violence as internalized. It's really just part of who this guy is and how it bubbles out. It's a really interesting performance and a really great movie. Bogart should be in everyone's top 5. So Boatman's fucking wild, because Bogart's the man. He's the best. I think you mentioned Matthau always playing Matthau, and you could say that for Bogart, but he can twist it in the right ways and have the right dynamics to his persona that he can play off. He can play the devolving into violence and Madre, the boiling anger in this, the romanticism. It's all still kind of his delivery, but he can go to those different personality levels. I think is pretty stunning. Okay, Bo, defend yourself.
Okay, so I think that Bogart is really good in like In a Lonely Place, and I actually think he's really good in African Queen. And I think he's really good in Treasure.
Let's stop an African Queen shit.
I wasn't stopping. I said Madre. I said that out. Anyway, I think he's good. I don't like the default Bogart performance. That is like what I'm not a fan.
I thought you were about to say he's bad in Casablanca. I was like,
no. I'm saying I don't love like.
Let's talk about Key Largo.
Key Largo, big
Maltese Falcon.
Yeah. Honestly, Maltese Falcon. I don't like just Bogart on default. It's just
fucking
not
love that shit
the type of performance that like works for me, to be honest. It's not bad. It's just not what works for me, and that is what really brought him down. I like it when he's actually like stretching himself, but when he's not, it just doesn't work for me personally.
Wow, what's also great about default Bogart is it creates such room for the supporting actors around them to do great work. Speaking of Maltese Falcon, what's really best is the dynamics with Greentree and Laurie. I think just him giving that noirish persona provides great material for someone to play off of him, and those performances.
And his fucking delivery in this movie of my favorite movie line ever, I was born when she kissed me, I died when she left me, I lived a few weeks. Like the way he delivers that line is perfect, and no one else could deliver that line that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those were lyrics from a national song, so now I'm questioning my fandom of the band. All right.
Bars too, I guess, right?
Yeah, number 2 for Bar.
Yeah, my number 2 is James Stewart for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
You're all wackadoodle, but go on. I'll explain later.
I might leave before you do that.
Not the pick.
Let him talk. Let him go. Let them all
James Stewart is just one of he's such an earnest figure when he's acting, and things like this, the Philadelphia Story, and like even some of his later stuff, there's such an ease and charm to him that's just really inviting. even when he's playing characters that aren't necessarily like, oh, look at me, I'm the nicest guy in the world. There's still something about him that's just so dynamic, and it just draws you to him. And this is honestly, in my opinion, just one of the greatest performances of all time. Let's just get it over with. The filibuster scene is amazing. Like, it's hard to play, like, white and disheveled and not look like you're trying too hard. And he pulls it off masterfully. He's just one of those actors that you gravitate towards, and he just really captures your attention.
Yeah, my 3 for the same performance. Barr kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Obviously, the filibuster scene, but I think he starts out with so much pure naivete that when he is able to sell that transformation so well and make it feel so natural. But you also look at the end of It's a Wonderful Life. Just pure joy with him running into Bedford Falls. Just like one of the just purest, examples of just happiness on film. And I think he sells that so well. But you also look at the dark, twisted obsession that he's able to play in something like Vertigo or even Rear Window. He's just able to play so many modes while still being that charming Jimmy Stewart.
I love James Stewart, as it says down low. I don't know who Jimmy Stewart is, but I love James Stewart a ton. This is the wrong pick. I think it sounds boring, but It's Wonderful Life is a perfect performance and has a lot of the touchstones to what we relate to. To him. And I also am a big fan of Vertigo, but it's a different performance. But I think you want to say a really signature performance for Stewart. I think it's all captured in Wonderful Life for various reasons. I just when you guys say shit like this, like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I just got to remember how big believers you guys are in the American dream, and you just love watching some guy.
He's from Iowa.
Be all about what it means to be American and protect our democracy and stand up for shit. In a way, than this movie that
Why couldn't this have been the stream I accidentally ended the
honestly, I need to rewatch. It's been a while, but I sometimes feel like this is a performance that I'm laughing at rather than participating with. I feel like there's a lack, not like a sympathy, but lack of nuance in his performance that almost he's thinking down on that kind of Midwestern lower thing. I think he's too incompetent in this movie to be believable later. And that performance, when he's doing a similar thing in It's a Wonderful Life, and really what he's known for, that kind of wholesome middle American persona that I think is captured lively. I think because they're not trying to portray him as the one great American. And maybe that's just a little too much for that. It's a little too swing votey. Kevin Costner's swing votey for me. I haven't even seen that movie. I just wanted to make that joke.
Obviously, Zack has never seen him in After the Thin Man.
No, he probably
I have. Let's look this up. I've played you in a match. I think I have. I just can't remember. Everything's a blur. Anyways, so yes, Stewart is great, but this is almost a joke on what he's known for. I talked about how Katherine Hepburn bringing up Baby did the exaggeration in a way that I love before she was doing. This is the exaggeration of what we know for Stewart in a way that I find too much.
I wonder if that fan is strong enough to hold a rope.
Find the bleach.
All right.
This is one of the most corny, saccharine, full of shit classic movies that exist. To me, this is one of the most overrated classic films of all time. I've been waiting to talk about this. This movie, for one thing, like Lucas said, this is why the fucking filibuster is a poison on American politics. So shame on this movie for that. Also, I think exactly what Zack is saying. He is, to me, looking down on this character, and it never feels like he's really connecting to it. And I think this is all of Capra's worst tendencies that I think he course-corrected and became a much better filmmaker later in life, is because he realized it's not just about this one overload. This is like eating pixie sticks, like pure, like like out of the can. It's like so sweet and saccharine and
They
so
don't come in cans.
And there's nothing. To me, there's nothing real about this performance, and I think this movie is like the worst version of this kind of movie. And I know that everyone loves it. To me, the same kind of person loves this movie. I'm sure loves Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. That makes a lot of sense in my mind. But to me, this is not a great. There's so many great Jimmy Stewart performances. He's fucking amazing in Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He's fucking amazing in Vertigo, even though he's just driving around doing nothing, apparently, according to some people. But no, I think he's a fucking amazing actor that I kind of regret not having on my list. But this is definitely not the movie I would have chosen.
Yeah. I would have picked the Shop Around the Corner for sure. Or
it's better than this performance.
It's a solid performance.
I wouldn't have picked it. Again, it probably would be Man Who Shot Liberty Valance because I think that's an interesting turn on his sort of persona. But I think that this is far from my choice for Jimmy Stewart.
Okay, think about this. He's playing the same performance in Harvey, but that guy, like, something's up with him. So
he's got a fucking talking rabbit. He's got a fucking rabbit.
He has a talking rabbit, so it's like it makes sense. So take the guy at Harvey.
That is called a puka.
Okay,
this guy's gonna change America.
And you guys say I have bad opinions. Okay.
He gets elected.
Do you want to go back to like your last 2 weeks of Letterboxd? We can do.
Hey, Cody.
My last 2 lines of Letterboxd are better than any of that opinion you had on that fucking amazing performance. Get out of here. Okay.
And I want the sequel to this where Harvey gets elected president, makes the rabbit vice president. That would be a great America. Okay, let's move on.
Harvey is the name of the rabbit. What are we doing?
These are all Harvey.
The names himself.
Darko, the president movie.
Oh my god.
My two.
Your two. Okay, there you go.
My two is an actor who's obviously great later in his career, but I think his work in the 60s and 50s is so strong that I think it's impossible not to include Paul Newman. I picked Cool Hand Luke. I think that is his best performance, period. I think he just explodes onto the screen in this. Cody hates it when I describe an actor as exploding. But I think that he just everything, like just little when the one guy's like giving the rules, like spends the night in the box, and the way he just like finishes the guy's sentence. He's just toying with everyone in this movie and is fantastic. But Paul Newman has so many incredible classic performances. You look at Somebody Up There Likes Me, you look at Bar's Pig Cat and a Hot Tin Roof, which I won't talk about because I'm sure Bar will. You look at Paris Blues, he's really great in that. Look at, it's more of like a sappy romantic comedy, but he's actually really charming in Kind of Love. Just so many like classic Newman performances are fantastic. If you want to see him do like a really great comedy performance, what a way to go. He is super funny in that movie, playing kind of like this beatnik painter, and he's hilarious in that movie. Also, of course, The Hustler. His 60s and 50s work is just so great.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about Cool Hand Luke, mainly because it's the second movie I was talking about that I haven't seen. But
Jesus Christ.
When it comes to
you still pick Newman.
I did, because as Paul said earlier with Joan Crawford, Paul Newman's like one of the best eye actors. Like you watch him in Torn Curtain, and just the way that his eyes are in that movie, incredible. Especially when he's like actually reading the scientific formula that he's there to like find. Amazing. But in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, there's just such a sadness behind those eyes and an anger from that sadness. And it's just a way that I know everyone will talk probably about Elizabeth Taylor in that movie. She's absolutely fantastic in that movie. But there's just something about the control that Paul Newman has in that film. And until that just scene of pure rage and frustration in the basement, that it's just so powerful. I've made this statement as a kind of recurring joke, but he really is a GOAT level actor.
GOAT level actor. That's why Boat, I set up rating each pick. It's an A+ for his pick, and Bar gets an A- for the same exact pick because you picked the wrong movie, and mainly because you just haven't seen Korean Luke. Honestly, that's why I lowered it.
I've been wanting to.
Paul Newman from the great Shaker Heights, which I kind of live in. I live in Cleveland Heights. It's right next to it. My mom sent me a Facebook message if you want to go to my page on where his house is, if you want to go see it in Shaker Heights. That was in the past week. We could all take a tour together and debate whether it's Korean Luke or Cat in the Hot Tin Roof. Cat in the Hot Tin Roof, top tier title. I don't know. There's a cat, there's a roof, great title.
There's also a roof.
There's also a roof and it's hot, baby. Cool Hand Luke is I think a perfect movie star, being a movie star performance. He does so much with his smoldering look in that, and he has that rebelliousness throughout that, which kind of shown in Cat in the Hot Tin Roof or like some of these early 50s, but like left-handed gun. Am I missaying that movie? The Hustler, he had that like bad boy, pretty guy streak that I was kind of saying. Earlier with what's his face? Fucking this has been an hour and I forget everything I said before. But Paul Newman in this, he's playing kind of a Jesus figure in a way, but in a way that's like he's so lackadaisical in a way, like he just not choosing this leadership, but just how he walks through the earth and that kind of coolness and that confidence just like attracts everyone around him to kind of following. It's almost a way like we want to live like him, like all of us facing, our own mental demons, just want to be able to have that level of chill despite everything going wrong in his life, even though by the end of that movie you kind of realize that was a little bit of a cover, that he faces the same pains and internal pains that we kind of all are feeling with how that movie kind of ends up. And I mean, there's a lot of great Paul Newman performances after. Honestly, my favorite performance might be The Verdict. It's not my favorite movie, but maybe favorite performance because he's aged so well in his career. But his 50s and 60s is full of bangers and full of top tier performances. So it really deserves it. Everyone should watch. I don't know. I feel like I have a specific taste. I know Paul does as well for like the meandering detective movies where someone's going around without really ever understanding what the purpose is. But him and Harper, he played that kind of Marlowe role. He's not Marlowe, but the Marlowe-esque role so well in Harper as well. So watch that to watch him do something a little scummier, a little greasier. And Butch Cassidy, top tier, like wrestling performance for me as well. So I love Paul Newman. Paul, your thoughts on the new man?
Yeah, usually I'm like the big guy who's like, if you've got someone's named Paul, I try to fit them into my YLS somehow. I love Paul Newman. I think part of it is that I think a lot of my favorite stuff of his is later on in the 70s and 80s. Butch Cassidy would probably be my favorite of this kind of era, but I think he's great in HUD. He's really good in, oh my God, what's the name of it? Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, he's really good in. But I guess I just didn't.
70s.
Is that 70s?
Yeah, that's 72.
Oh, that's 7. Oh, that's right. But yeah, like there's like a lot of the performance I love of him, like stuff like kind of his bigger, obviously more famous roles, The Verdict, Slapshot, The Sting, like that's all the stuff that I really connect with him the most in, I think. But I mean, he's an awesome actor. He's like the perfect movie star, I think. And I love that he was also a filmmaker, which is something that I don't think it's talked about a ton when it comes to his legacy. But he's like a really fascinating figure. Yeah, I mean, just kind of missed out. It's just a classic case of like, if a lot of my favorite movies of yours are not in that era, it's just like hard to make it onto the list with like people who have made like 15 movies that are really like all in this era. So,
yeah. I read his biography too. And he's just someone of like so much interest and curiosity and everything he puts his like mind to that I think is really evident in his
fucking salad dressing, man. That shit slaps.
That was actually his like daughter's project that he just kind of let his thing go on as well. But he's like really into racing and so much attention to racing.
It's like Michael Fassbender. Yeah, talk about exploding in a movie. Moving on to my number 2, as I mentioned earlier, my number 2 is Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday. There are days where I think this is my favorite movie, but I just think that she is like the most charming actor I think that has ever lived, and I think that like the way that she uses her charm in this movie, I mean, just the scene where she's like playing with the straw when they're sitting outside at the cafe is like the most charming anyone's ever looked in a movie, I think. But then the movie at the end kind of brings it around and becomes something more full and having more depth. And I think when she says "so happy," like I have like wallow into a puddle of tears. And but I just think she's like a perfect movie star because anything she's in, anytime she's on the screen, like I feel like I can't look at anything else but her. And sometimes it's almost like to the detriment of her co-stars because it feels like she's almost too magnetic. But again, I just think she's like so good. I mean, and her and romance stuff, I think is just so good. And she like carries the chemistry even with actors who are like, you know, way too old to be playing her love interest. Not necessarily here, but in other movies, like she makes it kind of work to an extent, I think. But I mean, she's so fucking good in this movie as like this kind of naive. I mean, this is like one of the most ingenue performances ever, but is also like the best version of that, I think. And I like the way that she like opens herself up to this world, that she kind of is interacting more with Joe Bradley, I think is great. And yeah, the way she plays kind of the slight mystery, but like kind of, again, the naivete of her character is just perfect. Could have picked a bunch of performances, but this is my favorite movie she's in, my favorite performance of hers, kind of all of her movie star stuff in a movie. So yeah, Roman Holiday.
So I had her at number 5. Paul also picked my favorite movie of hers. I will say that the two best people to ever play on the trade of On the Verge of Tears are Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. The scene where they're just looking at each other and like you could just tell that they both want to, you know, express their emotions in that moment, but no, they have to repress them. It's just amazing. The movie I picked to represent her, though, is Two for the Road, because I think I picked that one because it's kind of the broadest range of emotions for her in any of her movies. There's so many different emotions that she has to juggle throughout that entire thing. Just the utter distaste for her husband, but also the earlier time period where she's just absolutely in love with him, and just being able to do what she has done in films such as these and Sabrina and the Children's Hour and other lighter, quote unquote, later films like How to Steal a Million, and then darker things like Wait Until Dark, where she genuinely gives one of the best performances of a blind person from someone who literally actually can see.
Calm down, son of a woman. No, I'm reading the fucking timer, you dumbass. There.
And I'm just going to end it there. Thanks, Koho.
Sorry, Boatman jumped at me for no reason.
So,
Boatman.
Hey, Boatman, nice tire tracks from that bus you just got run under.
The main issue here is you have the wrong Hepburn higher up, Cat Hep, the better Hep. Because Audrey Hepburn, I'm kind of mixed bag on. I love her performance in Roman Holiday. This is the right pick. It's really great. I think she's pretty bad in some other movies. I think Children's Hour, I think she is just not carried the dramatic weight in that movie. I have a lot of issues with Charade. I feel like her and Cary Grant just seems so unattached to that movie. I feel like they just showed up. I feel like they're kind of sleepwalking through that movie in a way. I think that movie in general, I think, is lacking a real rhythm to it. I don't. But I say I love her Roman Holiday. I like have a real affection for Funny Face, and specifically her jazz dancing in Funny Face. I am so proud I did not say Funny Girl, the classic Zack move. And so it's like, yes, you picked Roman Holiday. It's that great romantic comedy, that great combination of like her royal naivety, but also the charm and a little bit of rebelliousness for her like way to escape as well that she comes. But really, it's just top tier charm in Roman Holiday. And Bar, you're talking about Two for the Road. You picked Two for the Road, which I mentioned William Holden's like Wild Bunch was his like evolution to where his career was going, playing off of his passing. And that's what Two for the Road kind of is for her. She's no longer this, upbeat princess from Roman Holiday, but she's a little sadder, a little lonelier, a little more worn down that you really feel in that, and has great chemistry with what's his face. That's what Albert. There we go. Thank you, with Albert Finney.
Honestly, the second best co-lead I think she's ever had.
Yeah, and I honestly think it's like, I think she's just someone that depends a lot on the movie she is making and the people around her, and because but oh my god, I'm done talking. I can't remember names of things. What's the musical where she's learning how to speak? She's bad at that as well.
My Fair Lady.
90% of the time, I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
R.I.P. my trivia career in my brain. Let's go on. Okay. Number one.
I've never been more happy.
Wait. Boatman didn't get to talk.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to talk.
I honestly never have been more happy to be dumped in my life, and I got dumped in Cars 3.
It's like a girlfriend dumped you and then got chlamydia after. Like, I just did that to myself.
Ooh, self-burn. Those are rare.
Okay. I feel kind of similarly about Audrey Hepburn that I do about Bogart, in that I like Hepburn when she is like stretching herself, but I'm honestly not that big of a fan of just the standard Hepburn performance. I'll fully admit, like, I haven't seen Two for the Road. I haven't. There's like a lot of those big performances, like Wait Until Dark, that I want to see, but I haven't.
Boatman, you would love Two for the Road. It's basically the Before trilogy.
I have been told I need to watch Two for the Road.
I feel like you'll start just getting into Albert Finney. All right. That's a good person to get into. Number one's now Bar.
My number one is a little obvious for me, but it's Jack Lemmon. And the movie I picked was The Days of Wine and Roses.
That is also my number one. That exact performance as well.
Wow. You guys have very close 1, 2, 3s.
Yeah.
That's why.
So before having seen this movie, I feel like I probably would have picked The Apartment as his best performance. Because when you think of Jack Lemmon, you think of like the Walter the Matthau Lemmon comedies, things like The Odd Couple, and things like that. But The Days of Wine and Roses, first of all, thank you, Cameron Redshaw, for forcing me to watch this movie. Two of the greatest acting scenes I've ever seen in my life are him in therapy, and especially in the greenhouse, where he's tearing the greenhouse up. Holy God, the build of that scene is fantastic. I had said previously that Gregory Peck earned his Oscar that year. As much as I still really love that performance, Lemon's performance in Days of Wine and Roses is utterly spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like, from everything I hear about, like, that Best Actor race, it's like, oh yeah, the two candidates were Gregory Peck and Peter O'Toole. Yeah. Like, have you considered voting third party? Because Jack Lemmon and Burt Lancaster are both better than both of them. Lancaster and Birdman of Alcatraz is great. Jack Lemmon, this is the best performance of his career. It's close between this and Network, but like Lemmon plays so many different notes in this. What?
He's not Network. What the fuck?
Network.
Okay, who's happy to lose their partner?
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, indeed.
What were you thinking? Were you thinking The Apartment? Is that what you're gonna try to say?
I thought I meant The Apartment. Okay, shut up, Lucas. Everyone just needs to calm their ass. Okay.
Says the guy who's shouting at everyone.
Bar basically said everything about Lemmon is just one of those great actors. Look at something like Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts is like a great like scene-stealing comedic performance, but like he plays a lot of beats in The Apartment. And like this is my favorite performance for him.
I really like Jack Lemmon doing the Jack Lemmon shit. Him in The Apartment, just like McClane, is a perfect performance because he can be that kind of a little dweeby, a little, I would say, walked over in a way, but with a real heart and a real love that I think we can all, relate to in a way as all dweebish boys on the YouTube channel right now. I feel like we connect very much to, the Jack Lemmon persona. Someone who's, why can't the girl just love me? Probably the worst part of all of us. And anyways, you guys like fucking belong in a sanatorium with Jack Lemmon screaming like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That is 10 seconds of him going, whoa, whoa. After after the shitty ass greenhouse scene that is so bad. I was so into this performance for 40 minutes. I'm like, Jack Lemmon, you're bringing Jack Lemmon. You're being charming. I believe this relationship. You're kind of sad. And once he goes into the alcoholism, it's so intense and too much and not real. And that's why I said we compare the performance of Mental Health, where this is where it comes from nowhere and it's so unbelievable. Like he just like understands what alcoholism is, so he's going like, I'm going to act out of my mind and falling into misery when there lacks like any subtlety or realness to that performance. And the turns between him being on the wagon and off, it's such a 108 or a 360. I don't understand math. I'm a fourth grade teacher.
180, I think is what you're trying to
180. Okay. It's such a 180 flip in his performance. It's like not the same character, and that's not like with someone battling sobriety is going to completely be a different person in a way. And I've witnessed alcoholism, so I'm sure.
Zach, you don't want to watch movies. You want to watch security cam footage of some random hotel lobby. That's what you want.
I would get arrested for that, but this is just. I don't think Jack Lemmon is necessarily the best like dramatic actor all times, unless he's able to connect that to his kind of normal persona. When he can find the heart really within him, and he's trying to do something more like that he can't relate to, it's inauthentic and intense. And honestly, oh my gosh, the actress in it. Someone help me.
Lee Remick.
Yeah, I think is doing it a lot better. I think there's a lot more groundedness to what she's delivering, and then so it makes sense that they'd hang the movie kind of on her and her struggle by the end, because Jack Lemmon isn't pull off. That garden scene is insane, just ridiculous. Okay, so you can. I'm going to excuse you that you didn't pick The Apartment because you picked it for McLean. Because that's really the pick that was necessary. And I watched Odd Couple. I said better performance than this. Pretty good in Odd Couple. Okay.
Wow, I feel like I'm stepping into a fucking minefield between the two of you guys. I have not seen this movie. I actually am excited to watch it. I do think Blake Edwards is a pretty bad director of acting generally, and I don't like the performances he gets. So I'm wondering what I'll think of this movie and this performance. I mean, what other movies do you disagree with as far as Blake Edwards? But I'd love to hear. But I think Jack Lemmon's really good. Honestly, a lot of my favorite Jack Lemmon, again, this is kind of a boring answer, but it's like his 70s, 80s, and 90s stuff. I think he's really fucking good in Missing. He's really good in Save the Tiger. But a lot of my Jack Lemmons tend to be his slightly older and more wizened performances, which is what I connect to more. I mean, Jack Lemmon is like the greatest classic actor of all time, is like a slightly surprising thing, and maybe I shouldn't be that surprised, but like I think it's an interesting choice. And he's really fucking good in a lot of in like all the classic movies I've seen him in, basically. But yeah, just not like one of my absolute favorites, but I do want to watch this movie to have an opinion on it because I haven't seen it, so I can't really say.
I have one more thought. He really is one of, I think, our greatest comedic actors, we've had. And this is the true fashion of overrating drama over comedy, which is not just done in our community, but it's done in film talk in general, that because he gave this dramatic alcohol performance, that's better than him giving his comedic performance in Some Like It Hot or that, which is just not fair, because you have to really appreciate what he's doing to make those comedy rules, shine. I officially change all your picks to Some Like It Hot. You didn't pick Days. It's been changed. Okay.
Wow. All right. So Paul, that was also your one, right? So you don't have anything.
Yeah. Number one for Paul.
Yeah. I mean, my number one is not surprising. My number one is Toshiro Mifune. The movie is High and Low. Yeah, my favorite actor ever. I think he commands the screen like no actor ever has, and I think he can play so many different types of characters. I think when you see him in Rashomon, he's acting like a fucking wild animal. Like he's moving like an animal. He's not moving like a regular human. But in this movie, the way that his anger is forced beneath the surface is so perfect. And you see him want to explode at so many moments when he's put in this impossible situation. But the fact that he never cracks and the fact that he kind of maintains this, but then the confrontation scene of him near the end is great. And I love that the movie kind of like shifts a little bit away from him at certain points and then kind of comes back to him. But I think he is the grounded center of this movie. But him as an actor, to me, I mean, there are like 24 performances I think that he's absolutely fucking incredible in. He's always, to me, the most memorable part of any movie that he stars in. And he's great in Yojimbo. I think he's perfect in something like Drunken Angel as like the young kind of upstart Yakuza guy. But this movie, I think, it's maybe my favorite movie of all time. I think he's fucking just phenomenal in this movie. And the movie is like so centered around his character and the way his character kind of shifts a little bit. but the way that he kind of forces his anger beneath the surface is kind of unlike any other actor I've seen, and the way he commands his emotions, I think, is so perfect. You can just tell that he's like pained, and he doesn't. There's so many things you can tell he wants to express, but he can't. But he does it physically in all kinds of different performances. But this, I think, is kind of the quintessential one of his, where he's doing all the different things he's good at in one movie. He's a fucking, my favorite actor, and my favorite classic actor. I think he's just a master of the craft.
I don't want to talk about this. I feel like I'm so much on the outside on what Kurosawa is doing, and I told Paul that this is secretly an episode comparing Japanese directors, because I think Ozu is so much more on my level and how I connect to movies, and he's very emotionally driven and character driven way he's doing, and I've never been really able to put a pen on what Kurosawa does. In a way, I just have such a hard time connecting to all his movies, and I think Mifune's performance sometimes I think is part of that, and I think sometimes his acting gets a little more credibility and attention because of his connection to Kurosawa, because people love these movies and it's important, rather than really everything he was able to add to it. But maybe I'm sure I'm underrating it just because I don't feel these movies. I do think this is the right pick. It's probably between this and Ikiru, which I have thoughts about that actor, but between those two, as my favorite Kurosawa, the ones I've seen, I did really go for this. But the part that Mifune is on screen for the first hour is the part where I'm so disconnected, because I think it's this morality play that runs circles. And I think a lot of classic Japanese cinema I feel sometimes it's just like walking in circles, repeating the same idea, and I just kind of lose myself. But once it becomes a procedural, which Mifune is not as much in, and you're getting the crime elements, I'm really into that street level direction of Kurosawa, and I really appreciated and loved in this movie. But Mifune in those, that morality play aspects, I do think is giving a very connected performance, and you can still read his moral conflict that he's dealing with in this kidnapping situation, and I think that conflict is really interesting and complex, but I think it's just done for too long. So I don't know. I've seen enough that I feel like I have a firm opinion, but maybe I need to rewatch. And my attention definitely is always a struggle in Kurosawa movies. For some reason, I just have a real hard time keeping my focus. So I don't feel like I have a fair opinion on that. But everybody else, your thoughts on Mifune?
Mifune is an actor that I've wanted to do a deeper dive into, and Rashomon is the only one I've seen so far.
I've seen Rashomon, High and Low, and Yojimbo, and honestly, I think Yojimbo is my favorite performance I've seen from him, though he is really good in High and Low. This is a completely fair pick. He kills it in all three performances I've seen from him. I want to watch more. But yeah, Yojimbo, I think I love the way he is just toying with everybody, and he has this aggressive form, but he also has this very playful attitude, and that I really love. Yojimbo, I think Yojimbo might be my favorite Kurosawa movie, period. I want to watch it again, not watching it for deep cuts and actually watching it to enjoy it, because honestly, that's kind of, screw you, Michael Campbell, for making me watch a great movie for the first time for deep cuts instead of being able to actually enjoy it. And screw you too, Bart, for doing that with Brazil.
I mean, you could have watched the movies before that, to be fair. They existed before the movie.
I introduced you to Brazil.
Or what do you think of him based on just Rashomon? I'm curious. I know you've only seen Rashomon, but what did you think based on just the one movie? Because obviously that is his most loud kind of.
He's easily the person I think of the most when it comes to this film, because there's such an animalistic instinct to him that just really draws your attention.
Yeah, he literally he studied tigers for a month or something before the movie, to move physically like that, which is kind of wild because you can see that.
I love it when people do that. It's such a great acting technique, and it worked really well for him.
So that's the end, and I'm going to need lots of reminders of what goes. Do I go to everyone's list next, right? Grades?
Yes,
grades,
and I will pull them up.
Oh, before we get that, I'm going to let you all know your grades drop at least 1/3 of a grade level because there's no Barbara Stanwyck, which is bullshit, and you drop 1/100th of the level for not having S.C. Sackle for me being in Connecticut on your list as well. Who's just the best guy of all time.
Wait, is it Christmas in Connecticut? Is Meet Me in Connecticut a different movie, or is
it's
not Christmas in Connecticut?
I have said Meet Me in Connecticut 80% of the time that I've talked about that movie, but yes,
it was a crossover event. Paul, you missed it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did Arnold change the title when he remade it?
I think you can back catalog Lucas and Zack pods, and I've done that like 8 times. So, anyways, so we go to Bar's list. Do we put it up?
Well, you just go lowest grade first.
Lowest grade. Okay, lowest grade. So actually, we are going to Bars, and Bars and Boats are very similar in a lot of ways. I'm giving you still a B+. I'm a high letterbox grader, so we're going kind of nice. You see a B+. A lot of things I love. I said right up top. Everyone failed up top for me. Jack Lemmon and Mifune. I
get like Mifune's name down.
Yeah, there we go.
But I think the difference, because we can show a Boat, who I also give a B+ to. The difference of why I picked Boat is I talked about this on my overbar, is because he took more chances on his list and he had more interesting picks, and I think we should appreciate interesting picks. So having, especially near the bottom, Malden and Cobb and Woodward, I think it's some bigger swings and representing some character actors that Bart didn't take. So I'm going to put him at second. And Paul almost blew it at the end for me with Hepburn and Mifune at the top 2, but his upper tier had so many great picks I love that were nobody else's list, like Denuze and Crawford, Bergman, and having Bogart the highest, which I think definitely belongs to the top 5. I think it's all very important picks.
I regret doing this.
Hey, and Paul guy, I'll give him an A-. I said probably would have been an A, but there's no Barbara Stanwyck, and she's the queen of all of us. Okay, our combined list, right? There we go. So combined list, we got Bergman at number 10 for Notorious, William Holden for the Wild Bunch at 8, Cat Hep for Bringing Up Baby, Mifune at 7, Newman at 6, for Cool Hand Luke, I got to pick the movies. Audrey Hepburn for Roman Holiday 5, Truman Mclean at 4, Bogart at 3, where he belongs. Stewart at 2 for the wrong movie, but we'll list up that Jack Lemmon. Oh God, those top 2 are the ones I argued at the most.
Those top 2 are perfect.
I feel like I picked the people in this episode, but can we change this all? We got number 1 Barbara Stanwyck, 2 Ginger Rogers for Top Hat.
No,
Top Hat for Ginger Rogers performance.
I'm just saying things at the top of my mind.
May as well have picked Swing Time.
She's really good in Stage Door. That's why I put her in. All right. So thank you, everybody. It was great. I'll never be back on the show in any capacity because I don't remember words or how things move from one first to the end. Sequences. But it's been a lovely time. I'm sorry for yelling and making orgasm noises about Jack Lemmon. That was very inappropriate, but it's been fun.
Your opinion on his performance was inappropriate.
Good night. I love you.
Boatman's only talked about actors exploding. So
Okay, and outro.
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
You're not going to intimidate me. I'm entitled to my opinion.
Now what will it be? Death or exile?
You're hopeless. You're a hopeless mental case.
You better lawyer up, asshole. Because I'm not coming back for 30%. I'm coming back for everything.
Normally, I would say Auf Wiedersehen. But since what Auf Wiedersehen actually means is till I see you again, and since I never wish to see you again, to you, sir, I say goodbye.